Hi, everyone. Sorry to be late. We had a small technical problem. Carmen, everything is all right. We are here. I'm here. Uh, um, and Lisa Theobald is here too. So that is all cool. And we're going to share for a few minutes and then we'll get started, okay, in earnest. So thank you very much for waiting. Please do share us out. We'll be doing a full program tonight. Okay. So we'll start to do a little sharing now, and you will be able to see us.
I'm sorry, Joe. I'll be right back into the light. I just, because it took me so long to get my technology straight, I want to go get my notebooks so that I know what I'm going to talk about here.
Okay, Lisa, get a glass of wine too.
Yeah, I wish I had some. I don't. I have no wine.
I'm sorry to hear that.
That's all right. I can fake it. I will just pour some iced tea. I'll pour myself an Arnold Palmer.
Oh, that's good.
Goodness gracious. I guess when I'm logged into my Google account on my computer, right, and you send me the link, I'm already in my Google account, so I just sign on and everything's good. And that's how I usually do this. But I've never done StreamYard from my phone. And since I don't have a computer today, I tried to sign in through my phone, and that's just one of those situations. All of my stuff on my computer is on my computer. All of my stuff on my phone is on my phone, and the two aren't supposed to cross.
Ah, is this for a security reason?
Yes, exactly.
Facebook is creating a little problem, just a little mechanical problem itself, which is when you try to share to a page. Oh, here we go. I'll go all the way down, making it very hard to share to that page. Facebook's becoming very weird the last few days when it comes to sharing. Okay, everybody, please share for us because Facebook
I'm afraid.
creating problems.
I'm afraid to even come out of the program to share onto Twitter because I'm afraid it's going to get goofy. So I'm just going to leave it be.
That's good because okay, I think probably Dolores will share on Twitter, and Lana, when she arrives, will probably share on Twitter also. So our people will pick that up for sure, I think. Okay.
Maybe I should just sit here in the dining room.
I'm sorry, say it again.
I think I'm just going to move to the dining room. I think this is a better space.
Okay.
Can you see me okay?
Let me look. I've been sharing.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think you're fine. You're not centered. Pretty good. You should be centered. Okay, now your head's a little cut off. I'm going to switch to another view to see how you look in another view. Okay, I think you look okay now. Okay, I think if you just relax and smile, you'll be fine.
All right, now I'm gonna go get my glass. Be right back.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Joe. It's very stressful.
It's all right. It's not a problem.
Okay. I have my
Okay,
glass.
so while we do this, we're going to start off with some comments. Okay. So we have been found in spite of the problem. Okay, Dolores from Facebook says hi, and she's sharing. Thank you, Dolores. Lana says hi. Okay,
Hey, Lana.
she is on the YouTube channel. Carmen says, there you are. Jeff Denton's here too. And he says, me too. And Lana says, I didn't get the notification. YouTube is weird. Laura Fielding said, is Amber joining or not joining? Amber is going to join, but the earliest she can get here is probably 6:45 Pacific time. Well, maybe she can get here just a little before that, but she's got to get home and she's got to get settled. But she will be joining us. Okay, I have to make a proviso on this. She will be joining us if she logs in from her computer. If she logs in from her phone, if she hasn't actually done that before with StreamYard, she'll probably have to pass some tests like what is your sign in through Facebook or sign in through Google. So
Or YouTube.
Or YouTube, yes. So
Yeah,
all that may be happening and creating some problems. But we'll see. We will all get over these problems. And we're going to laugh and have fun. And Laura says,
I'm ready.
okay, great. Laura says, not that it won't be great with both of you without. Laura says, I haven't cut those clips yet for Ali Kang. I got to do that. Be back later. Thank you, Laura. And Carmen says, hi, Lana. Me either. No notification. Kay says, shared. And Laura says, we'll share the YouTube link to Twitter. Thank you, Laura. And she says, I shared to a bunch of groups. Thank you again. And KRTD Media says, hey, Lisa, thanks for the wonderful message that you sent us on Twitter. Yeah, this is Shane, of course. We at KRTD Media really appreciate it. Joe, please read when you see so Lisa can hear this.
Thank you guys. I just was thanking them for having us on and for everything that they do because they're the people behind the scenes that people don't think about, right?
Yep, and they're helping us out. They sure are.
Big time.
They've been cutting clips for me, and I'm a little behind in getting with them on those clips this week because the end of the weekend, last weekend, was a little strange because I had to get through some business taxes. So I successfully did get through that, and I filed them on Monday, but it did take some time out from the weekend, which I didn't have to devote to posting clips and things like that. So Jeff Denton says, I shared the YouTube link to the Twitter chat and tweeted it. Thank you, Jeff. And Ghost Start, also known as Steve, that is to say STEEV, says, disappointed Nina didn't have any inspirational words on her clothes while shilling for Newsom on TYT. Laugh at laugh. And Lana Del says, good to see Lisa again. We'll be glad to see Amber.
Amber, yeah, that's going to be amazing. I can't wait.
That is going to be amazing. Yeah, I know we're all waiting for Amber. And Carmen says, Lisa is cute, especially in the beret.
Thank you, Carmen.
And Lana says, Carmen, so annoying. If I didn't come directly to the page, I would not have known they went live. And Lana says, Steve, are you around or square today? Inquiring minds want to know. Yes, I'm tired and silly. And Carmen says, I had to hunt around and I am in fascist book jail again, so I just had to wait till YouTube got their stream straight.
So, okay, so it's not just me that is like having new and improved or new and unimproved issues with all of this stuff, because it's all syncing up with Google and you don't even know that it's doing it, and now it wants to sync up with my YouTube. Ugh, yuck.
Yeah, well, it's all syncing up with things that Google owns, right? Because they own YouTube as well. Oh, that's a beautiful. Is that a cat?
Yeah, this is Sammy. Can you see?
I can't.
He's old. This boy is coming up on 16 years old.
Oh wow, that's a long time for a cat.
Yes, he's my baby, and I'm surprised because he usually doesn't come anywhere near me. He's not like this. He's not like this. Pretty funny. So anyhow, I was listening to some Howard Zinn stuff today, and then some other older Glenn Greenwald interviews that were done at I think Zinn was at MIT and Greenwald I think was in Utah at a university giving a Q&A and a bit of a talk. And of course a lot of that had to do with security and privacy, and then I tried to log into to your show. So obviously it's just all a little bit weird and unnerving. So I'm glad we're here.
Me too.
Let's talk MMT. And I'm sorry you had to do taxes this weekend. I hated doing that so much I left public accounting.
Well, these days my taxes, even the business taxes, are really relatively simple. But they threw me a curveball when when you're doing the K1, okay, for business taxes.
Yep.
They had 2 additional pieces of information that they wanted this year that they've never asked for before. And one of those 2 pieces of information led me scurrying around to previous tax returns going back maybe 10 years to try to come up with an answer to the question.
Was it a date or something?
No, it wasn't. No,
that's weird.
I'm not at liberty to say what they were asking me for, but they were asking for something that required. I thought I was all finished. Okay, when I got to the K1, I filled it in, in the usual way, and then I see these other 2 pieces of information. Bang! Another 2 hours of work.
10 years. I mean, you're not even supposed to have to keep your returns that long.
Well, these are returns for business, Lisa.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right, I get you.
So it's not, personal.
It's not your personal K1 that's coming. Yeah, okay, 10K. Sorry, I'm thinking K1. All right, go ahead.
Oh, yes, it's a K1, but it's a K1, but from a business to an owner of the business. In other words, that's what it is. And you're supposed to file the K1 this year, along with the business return, which, if I recall correctly, was not something you used to have to do. You had to file your K1 with your personal return, but generally it wasn't filed with the business return, if I recall correctly. But I may be a bit confused about that. One tends to forget something like that in 1 year. But let us get to the business of the day. You wanted to ask me some MMT questions?
Yeah.
Please.
Okay, so, God, I don't want to jump into something that everybody's going to fall asleep on me on.
The folks here like MMT. I don't think they're going to fall asleep.
Well, okay. So we had been talking before, and I have always been a little curious. I did listen to Warren Mosler speak at the UK conference the other day, Monday. And oh, I've got to plug my phone in. That was really, really interesting. And one thing that he did mention, but skipped over, said he wasn't going to go into it because of the conversation for another time, is quantitative easing.
Yeah.
And I would love for you to give an explanation on quantitative easing, because I've never had anybody give me anything more than a tertiary once over, which usually means they didn't want to get into it or didn't understand it. So, but I would love to hear your explanation on quantitative easing, what it was used for, and when it started. We don't need to get into anything really like crazy, but
Okay. Well, okay. What quantitative easing really is just an extension. Okay, it's just a further extension of the normal Fed operations, which essentially trade new reserves, which the Fed is creating out of thin air for financial assets that say the banks hold, okay, or holding. Okay, and the reason why the Fed thinks this is a good thing to do, okay, is because it has to maintain what it sees as the money supply in the system. When the system tends to freeze up, okay, because money is short, okay, in the system, or confidence, okay, is not there for the system, then you begin to get, okay, a liquidity crisis. And the Fed sees itself as having to treat that in order to keep the stability of the system intact. And so the way it normally did that, okay, was to go into the market and to sell reserves and basically trade the reserves for financial assets of equal book value. And now,
okay.
This is normally just, a normal type of open market operation of the Fed. The way quantitative easing, okay, is different is in terms of the quantity. Okay, so in the crash of 2008 happened, the Fed then saw the system as totally seizing up. And to save the system, it poured billions and billions and billions, and even eventually trillions of dollars of new reserves into the system. It traded them for financial assets. But it was the quantity of the buying of those assets that was so unprecedented and so new that was given a new name. And that's where quantitative easing came from as a name. It's not really qualitatively a different operation, but it's quantitatively a different operation. And so that's the way I see it. Now, from an MMT point of view, this should have no effect on the net financial assets that are present in the system. And the reason why is because the Fed is only allowed to trade for financial assets of equal value to the reserves that it's sending into the private sector. Okay, you have a lot of static that's coming from your end, I believe.
Oh.
Which is
Is that my end?
I think it is coming from your end. I think it's a sound that's coming from your mic or something like that. Yeah, there it is again.
Please forgive me. I'm going to go and see if I can plug this in. I don't know. I think it's coming from your side.
Oh, you think it is?
Yeah, but it sounds like crickets or something outside.
No, to me it sounds like something coming through a mic. Jeff says he doesn't hear any. And Ghostart asks, when will AOC? Can you please?
I'm trying to fix it.
Okay. Okay, let's continue then. Okay, so when the financial assets, hang on a second, let me see if it's coming from my end. If I lower my volume.
If you mute me, Joe, see if that makes it any better.
Okay, if I mute you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me see if I can mute you. I've never mute. Oh, yes, I can mute you. Okay, I'm not hearing any static now. Okay, so let me explain, and then I'm going, okay, to unmute you. Okay. So, it's supposed to be trading only financial assets, okay, of equal value. If it trades, let's say $10 billion, okay, in reserves to somebody, it's supposed to be getting in trade $10 billion of financial assets in value. Now, where the trickiness of this comes in, the tricky thing, okay, actually comes in, is that it's trading paper values. What happens when the real values are different from the paper values? So, for example, in 2008, values were very quickly falling. The real values of things, or the market values of things, okay, were very quickly falling. The paper values of assets held by the banks perhaps were different from the market values of those assets. But the Fed was valuing those assets based on the paper values, and it was sending real reserves to the bank for things that might have had a market value that were far lower at that particular time. And so, through the quantitative easing process, even though legally and technically the Fed was trading, okay, for equal value, it might in fact have been pumping up the actual market value of the assets that it was pumping into the banks. In other words, it might have been increasing the value of the financial assets of the banks, though legally it wasn't supposed to be doing that. So I've always found that, okay, to be a possibility, and therefore have found the process of quantitative easing to be a bit suspect. Now, perhaps over time you reach, okay, an equilibrium where you're pumping in the quantitative assets, and so it is stabilizing the market values in the system. And so perhaps if you do that for a while, then the value of certain other financial assets, okay, that are held by banks are no longer crashing. So maybe over time, the market value is beginning to meet the paper value because you've stabilized the system again. So this may be what is going on. I'm going to unmute you now.
So did they start that because of the market seizing up prior to, during, right after the crash, or were they doing that before the crash?
No, they were not doing it at all before the crash. It was a response to the crash.
Okay.
And they saw it as them actually meeting a liquidity crisis.
Okay, because of, yeah, because everything seized. Okay, so I do remember the markets were so skittish. Capital was necessary. What do I want to say? Well, I mean, Lehman went away, right? They were the first ones to go away.
Oh, yeah, they were the first ones to go away, and the Fed believed it really made a mistake when it allowed them to go away.
Oh, sure. I mean, anytime you take out something like Lehman, you're in trouble, right? I mean, that only made sense. I mean, at the time, I think everybody was in a panic and
Yes.
trying to figure out what to do first, what to do second. And forgive me, I'm trying to figure out where to prop this phone up so I don't have to keep moving it. But when you take out, I mean, they would come in and do the due diligence, right? When you take out a arm of the financial sector that was involved in a lot of things, honestly, but somebody who comes in and rates people and does that due diligence and says you're solid, you're sound, you're this, you're that, you're not looking so great. You take out a rating agency. That spooked everybody. I think that was part of the big cascade of dominoes that nobody meant to do, basically.
Yeah. Okay, and it was after that happened they started to conceive of and play with the QE notion.
Mm-hmm.
That's when they started pumping an unprecedented amount, of new reserves into the system. So Lana asks, was the QE new dollars or simply reserves, to encourage banks to lend? Well, the reserves are new dollars. In other words, the reserves the Federal Reserve is pumping into the systems are new dollars. It's creating new dollars, but on paper, not new net financial assets. Because when it creates the new dollars, it trades those dollars for bank financial assets, of equal value that then go on the Fed's books.
So were they in effect buying bank assets or paper?
They were buying paper financial assets.
From the markets?
Yes, from the market, right. But actually, from the market, but not in the usual way, the open market operations. They were basically going to banks that they thought were having liquidity problems, and they were arranging these very, very large trades of the new reserves for the financial assets of those banks that were threatened in some way.
So
but that had
the securities?
They were buying securities, yes.
The mortgage-backed securities.
Yes, that was one of the things they were buying, the mortgage-backed securities. Exactly.
Yeah.
They were buying mortgage-backed securities. They were buying also government bonds, that were held by the banks.
Okay.
But they were buying stock market assets that were held by the banks.
Okay, now why that? Why the assets in the market? What was wrong with those? Were they really just trying to give the banks a cash, infusion?
They were trying to give the banks cash infusion, reserve infusion, because from their point of view, they wanted to stop a liquidity crisis. In other words, they thought they were fighting a liquidity crisis. Okay, now they did something else which was very unusual. They extended large lines of credits, essentially revolving credits, but to the banks that had problems, which were most of the major banks, at that time. And over a period of time, one of Randy Ray's students, or actually a few of his students, were doing a project, okay, to try to track this. And as of something like the end of 2011, I forget whether it was the end of 2011 or the end of 2012, but in their study, they found that the Federal Reserve had extended $27 trillion worth of credit to these banks on a revolving basis. $27 trillion worth of credit. It's just incredible. And by the way, it didn't stop at that time. That was the total these graduate students had worked out, as I said, in 2011 or 2012. But it went right on going after 2011, 2012. I don't think anybody knows what the final
I don't think
sum of credit was.
Well, and then I don't think anybody does, or at least I've never seen that pen put in the, there was never a pin put on the board that said, we have stopped QE from the standpoint of trying to shore up the banks because of the mortgage crisis, right? But then they went into QE2, and the last I heard, they're still doing quantitative easing. And so tell me.
Yes, it's become simply a regular mode, okay, of operation for the Fed. If they think there's anything going wrong, they will transfer large amounts of the reserves, essentially newly created reserves, to the private sector in return for financial assets of equal paper value.
So is this why they don't go to the Fed window?
They don't go to the Fed window because they dislike having to go to the Fed window. It costs them a little more money, but first of all, and it carries some sort of stigma to it.
Right.
Okay, but of course the Fed wanted to be very, very accommodating, okay, because it didn't want to cause any crashes, okay, of any kind. Okay, so I'm being asked here whether someone, okay, is typing. Is it Bonnie? No, Bonnie is not typing. All Bonnie is doing is she is currently sitting here and she's looking at me for fear that she might have been somehow interfering with something. But there are no computer clicks coming from my end whatsoever that I know of.
I don't even have a computer.
Yeah, my hands are here. They're not on the computer. Lisa's hands are there. They're not on the computer. So I don't know how or why this is happening. I'm
blaming Google. I blame Google.
You blame Google.
Yes, I do.
I don't know. I am closing all possible sources from the internet that could be causing this. I don't know what they are. Okay, so anyway, I'm sure you find that all very interesting, right?
Well, I'm just curious. It seems like something, whatever they're doing and why. My question would be, if they haven't been doing that all along, what would have happened?
What would have happened is that I think the nature of the trading that goes on in all markets these days, I think the volume of trading is unprecedented compared to, let's say, the 1990s or the 1980s, okay, or earlier times. And just the sheer volume of trading may be introducing a greater amount of sheer volatility into the system. And so there may be a greater chance for people to actually cause the system to hang up. And maybe the Fed is watching this very closely, watching the positions of the banks very closely, And when it's, seeing any danger at all, it's responding with quantitative easing to try to prevent the system from seizing up. Okay, but
Okay.
but don't know this for sure because I don't watch these kinds of things on a day-to-day basis. But there are people who do.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Mike Norman does. He also watches the daily Treasury statement each day. Uh, uh, um, I, it, it's really astonishing how much debt is paid back by the federal government each year. I'm talking federal debt now.
Okay.
Uh,
Bond market, you mean? Is that what you're saying? Through the bond market?
yes. Okay. In other words, there's a lot of short-term trading. Okay, of Treasury securities.
Okay.
3-month securities, 6-month securities, stuff like that. And then there's the repayment, okay, of the longer-term securities. So the Fed, for example, might be paying back something like $70 trillion worth of debt in the course of a year. Most of it is revolving debt.
Right.
It's all revolving, going back and forth.
Right.
So there are new issuances of Treasury security, and there's this continuous the repayment, okay, that's going on.
Yeah, I don't know. It's fascinating to me, but like a lot of things, the whole concept of quantitative easing is like, well, okay, how much do I want to dig into that? Um, I mean, I remember when derivatives were first coming onto the scene, and we were in school at that point in time, and we were learning the concept of derivatives, but they were pretty brand spanking new at the time. And I'm talking about formal derivatives in the sense of we'll slap a derivative on anything. We'll go to the insurance companies and they'll put a derivative on just about anything we want to produce, right? But they had yet to start doing that. It was 5 years or so after the fact that really started. No, that had really taken hold, right? Um, and then, of course, we had the whole securitization situation. Um, and we had FIN 44, where we started to realize that there were situations where we couldn't even, as auditors, we had to go in and take a look at, what was really sitting on balance sheets and what were in these contracts, and what was the real risk out there, because the whole derivative process kind of just went off with a bang, right? You can insure yourself against any risk and la 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 la. So um, there have been some basic holes in economics, not economics, financing, and the new kid on the block. I always seem to be stumbling into the new kid on the block, and I always seem to be scratching my head in the beginning and going, well, how's that going to work? And then 15 years later, it's like, oh, it didn't work. And so I like to ask those kinds of questions, but I only want to go so far. So thank you about the quantitative easing. So basically, the federal government is just buying up assets to keep everything moving, which is so that was maybe to pull the volatility out of the market.
Yes, I think so. And the MMT position on this is that since they're trading assets, okay, of equal value,
Mm-hmm.
uh, there are no exchanges of net financial assets. Okay? I shouldn't say exchanges, but there's no increase in net financial assets, okay, on either side.
No increase in the value.
No increase in the financial values. Okay, so in other words, from a technical standpoint, the Fed was not giving more financial value to the banks than it was getting from the banks.
Yeah, even trade sort of thing.
Even trade sort of thing. From the book value standpoint.
Right.
However, my question is, were they in fact
Mark to market.
increasing? I don't think they were doing mark to market on it.
No, they weren't. That's
They
a big
weren't.
deal. It's a big deal to go through and mark all your assets to market.
Right. They weren't
Big.
doing any mark to market.
Right.
So whether from a mark to market standpoint, they were actually increasing the financial assets of the banks, we don't know.
Somebody knew.
Okay. And that's a very
Somebody
big
always
issue because legally they're not supposed to have the power to do that. Okay. Here's Amber.
Yay! Maybe Amber can talk about antitrust.
Hi, Amber. How you doing?
Hi, everybody. I'm just getting off work, Joe.
Okay, Amber.
How are you guys? What did I miss?
Yeah, we're fine. We were talking a little bit of MMT, specifically QE, and I was raising questions about whether QE actually involved any accretion of actual market value to the banks. In other words, was the Fed actually pumping in increases, okay, in market value to the banks when it should have been trading things, okay, of equal value? Okay, so the MMT economists never much seemed to worry about that because what they were focused on, what was the effect of the quantitative easing on the economy, the real economy, you know, where people buy and sell things and, you know, do everyday business. From that standpoint, the MMT people felt that quantitative easing wasn't having any kind of favorable effect on the economy. So to do that, it was necessary to use deficit spending and fiscal policy to increase the net financial assets of people in the market. So some of this was done by the Obama administration at first, okay, through the ARRA, but then immediately following actually passing, okay, the ARRA, the Obama administration then tried its best to slow down the stimulus from the federal government because it was interested in moving towards a balanced budget. And so for the rest of the Obama period, it tried to pull back on the size of the federal deficit. And in doing so, it created the slowest of recoveries we've ever had since World War II, the end, okay, of World War II. It was a colossal mistake. That's what it did.
Yeah. Yep, okay. It was in the 90s too with Clinton and their ballot budget amendment too. Always a recipe for disaster.
Yes, and it did. It caused a recession during the period 2000 to 2002. In other words, the years of surplus caused that recession, but also left it also left permanent weakness when it came to the balance sheets, the financial positions, okay, of ordinary people. Because what happened was, okay, it became increasingly clear that the net worth, okay, of ordinary people was vastly dependent on their houses. And of course, the housing boom that was going on then created inflated balance sheets for people and gave them a false sense of security. Then when the housing crisis came in 2007, it was a major disaster for a huge number of people, for millions and millions, and millions, of people who had only these paper financial assets, but coming from their houses.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of reverse mortgages during that time too.
Yes.
Yeah, unfortunate.
Were they doing
Yeah.
reverse mortgages then? I don't remember the reverse.
Oh, yeah, they were doing
Yeah.
it
Oh, yeah.
Really?
in the 1990s at least, yeah,
Okay,
for
so
years.
lots of lines of credit, arms, nasty, ugly arms,
Right.
and then ridiculous appraisals as well. Like there was so much chicken and egg going on at that point in time. You know, you introduce a new product and they went out to the sales force and the sales team were getting incentives to introduce them to the market, right? And everybody had their sales pitches and the poor, you know, I'm not saying that everybody that it was out there who was wise to this didn't take advantage of this in some way or another. Lots of people bought second homes and third homes and things like that. However, a lot of people went out and just tried to get their first home and were put into homes that were way over their affordability range, right?
Right.
And
Exactly.
you know, it depended on where you lived and what kind of circles you ran in. But there were a lot of people who bought their first or, you know, second home. They were in, you know, a third of the way over their head as far as what they could afford.
Yes.
You know, and then you had the people who went in and took out lines of credit on their home to finally put, you know, take the trees down in the backyard or put the roof on or whatever it was, right? Remodel the kitchen or, you know, whatever it was. A lot of people did that. But it was one of those things where that's what people were doing, right? Like there was a long period of time where that's how people were getting, you know, if I don't work on this house now, I haven't put anything into it for 20 years. I got to do the roof. And since we're going to do the roof, well, you know, honey, let's throw in some kitchen appliances and the countertops and whatnot. I mean,
Yeah, let's put some solar panels up.
And everybody did it, you know? But nobody went to the bank expecting, at least that I knew, okay? And I lived in a pretty nice area at the time. But, you know, my neighbors were going to the bank with their fingers crossed, hoping and praying that they were going to be able to come back out, being able to do what they needed to do, you know, get the money that they needed to get or get the equity out of the house, go buy that house.
Very much.
And they'd come back and they'd be like, yeah, we can afford way more than we thought. And, you know, I just remember just sitting, looking around myself thinking, wow, you know, granted, I'm a little bit more astute, paid a little bit more attention. My parents were realtors when I was younger, la, la, la. But like when people went to get their first mortgages, they were scared to death. Everybody has to clean their credit up. People are hoping and praying. That was the dream, right?
Yes.
Get married, go buy a house. And for a good bit of time, a lot of people weren't able to do that. And then the market started to be a little bit more favorable to lending to people. And ta-da, people were starting to be able to buy houses. And then all of a sudden you start looking around and realizing, why? This is really great that my house is appreciating, but it seems a little out of the ordinary and it's awful quick, right?
Yeah, I know.
And then it just went poof, you know, then all these people that had lines of credit immediately had them shut down. They, you know, their credit rating dropped. They had to start paying it back. People bought houses in areas where they found themselves, their houses were worth, you know, almost half of what they bought the darn things for, right? And then, you know, and these are young professionals where they're realizing, you know, they're underwater a lot and starting to look around going, oh, we can't afford this. And God forbid they had an arm that was going to adjust or did adjust, right? It was just ugly and sad. So anyway, sorry.
Yes.
Well, now,
Sort of. But go ahead, Amber.
well, if now with these elevated house prices, you know, the prices skyrocketing, the, you know, the equity in your home, does not your property taxes go up as well? Aren't you paying more exorbitant, property taxes because of that as well?
It
I
depends
don't
on
know. I'm not a homeowner, so I don't know.
Yeah, some people did. Okay, in
Some
other
people
words,
did, but
some people did. Okay, in Alexandria, but for example, the property values were going up very, very fast during the period from 2000 to 2007. Then there was a major readjustment, okay, in the condominium, okay, that we actually rented, okay, an apartment in, okay, but we didn't own the apartment, okay, at that time. But we had some friends, okay, who owned apartments there, okay, of course, and they were getting hit with things like, okay, the most expensive apartment there, okay, the largest apartment there, had gone up to about $580,000, okay, in terms of the market value, okay, of that apartment. Alexandria was levying property taxes on them on that $580,000. Then the crash occurred, and the value of that apartment went down to something like maybe $380,000. A real major devaluation. And for a year or two, they were still paying taxes on the 580,000 valuation. They then had to fight with the city of Alexandria, to get a reassessment, okay, of their property done. So the taxes, okay, were brought into line with the real values, okay, of the property. But for a while there, they were really getting hit very badly. And I'm sure this was going on all over the country, in many, many places. I still can't account for the background noise. My settings are exactly as they always were. And I don't know, for a while, I noticed it quieted down between about 9:48 and, maybe 2 minutes ago, for maybe 9 minutes, it quieted down. And now the same clicking sound is back, as if somebody is, typing in the background. And, there's no typing that's going on for any of us, so I don't know what's going on. But anyway, shall we go back to the Red Berets at this point? Let's talk about the activism that's going on in the Red Berets right now. But for example, the vigil coming up, on November 19th.
okay.
What's happening there?
Well, the Red Berets are going to do a weekend. It's going to be 2 days worth of activism out. This time we're going to go to Vancouver, Washington. The initial action is planned to be a protest at Senator Annette Cleveland's office. She is the chair of the Senate. I believe the name of it is the Healthcare Committee, but it's the committee that the bill,
Yes.
the whole Washington bill, has to go through, and they won't give the bill a hearing. They haven't in the last year. So
I see.
So we're going to get together there. We're going to protest at Annette Cleveland's house. And when I say we're getting the old gang back together. Scott DeSnorris is coming with his wife, Anna, and his granddaughter, Emma. I plan to go. Who else is coming? Scott, myself. Oh, Fran. She's been with the Red Berets for years. She's going to come, which is amazing because she's coming all the way up from Miami. It is being organized by Leah Herkel and this is terrible. Johnson, I believe.
I think the name you're looking for, okay, is Rhonda.
There it is. Rhonda. Is it Rhonda Walker?
Yes, it is Rhonda Walker. Right.
Right, because it's their representatives district. And so we're going to do, the plan is to do the protest. Scott also is going to head up a candlelight vigil that will happen sometime over that weekend. Laura is talking about bringing in the singers that they did the opera compilation that was done by Fox Ravenhound that we sang, which is, well, I didn't, but they did, that they sang and video recorded. So that's all going to be really, really exciting. And there's a lot more ideas up in the air, but you're going to have Leah on next week, right?
Probably next week. I have scheduled for next week. I have Jason.
That's right, Jason. Mm-hmm.
And I have also Sharif scheduled, okay, for next week. Okay, so I probably will have Leah on.
Okay.
Sometime next week.
Who else? There was someone else that was coming.
Oh, I'm on this coming Saturday. I believe I am having Cindy Davis on.
There you go.
We've exchanged some messages, and
Beautiful.
she said that she was coming on, but I'm waiting for an actual finalization, if there is such a word. I'm not quite sure I've seen that yet. Okay, so I'm kind of waiting for that. And I think that's going to be important, okay, because evidently there's a new update from Jerry Friedman, okay, to his last update.
Yes.
So there's a second update now.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
And I'd like to talk to her, okay, about that. Okay, and then I also want to get into the details of how the trust can work as sort of Medicare Advantage type, okay, of intermediary. I'm not sure that I fully understand how that would work.
How in the world? What do you mean? Why are you using the word Medicare Advantage at the same time as you're talking about single payer for Washington? You're freaking me out, Joe.
Okay, I don't mean to freak you out, but if you look back at Cindy Davis's treatment of this, okay, the YouTube that she did, she was talking about what would happen if the waivers were delayed for some time, okay, or is it still possible for the trust to work, okay, to operate?
Uh-huh.
And she said, sure. And then she kind of explained, I think as best she could, okay, at that time, but I think she glossed over a little what it was going to be as a demonstration project. And in the context of a demonstration project, it was evidently possible for the project to function in a similar way to a Medicare Advantage program. But of course, it wasn't going to be the case. It wasn't going to work in the same way as a Medicare Advantage program. In other words, of course, it was going to be nonprofit. Okay, of course, it was going to charge different rates. Okay, of course, it was going to operate like a single payer program.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in other words, the intermediary was going to operate as a single payer program would.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but it was going to be like the kind of intermediary that a Medicare Advantage place is.
Okay, I don't know. I can't wait
Okay.
to talk. I can't wait to talk to her.
Okay, she stated that, but in a YouTube that she did, I believe, in November of 2020.
Okay. I didn't see it. I haven't seen it. So I don't know. But Medicare Advantage plans are run by MCOs. So I don't quite understand. They're underwritten and then sold and usually serviced, at least where I am right now. The Medicare Advantage plans are the MCO plans.
Right. So would not be the same thing, okay, as an MCO plan.
Mm-mm. No, it couldn't be.
All right. But I will send you a link after this is over, okay, to that video.
Okay.
And you can see where she says that.
Okay. I think you should mute me and let's talk to Amber.
Yes, I certainly agree. Yeah. Okay, so Amber, did you have any questions that you wanted to raise with me?
Specifically, I don't think so at this time, Joe. I kind of wanted to talk about, as far as Washington goes, a lot of people think that, you hear the Washington and you think Seattle, and a lot of people don't realize that the eastern half of the state is not like the western half of the state as far as not only the terrain and the geology, but the ideologies and the political spectrum. It's very different. So one of my goals down here in southeastern Washington now is to try and build up more of a presence down here as far as Red Berets, whole Washington, any kind of leftist, socialist people that we can get together. We're not as organized down here, not at all the way that they are on the western half of the state, and that really needs to change. And I'm working on, not working on, but I'm trying to encourage people, a call to action as far as getting more local in your communities. All of the issues that we have with healthcare, modern money, we need to take that into our local communities and be spreading that with people face to face. I think that's really important. And I feel like the way that we behave face to face with people really changes versus social media, talking to people, on your city councils, your school boards. You should know everybody on your city council. You should know who your local prosecutor is, your community organizers. And I feel like a lot of people really don't. And I just feel like if we can get people individually to focus on that community level stuff, then we can branch out. We'll be, like you say, watering the grassroots. I think that's where it really needs to start. And I feel like the news cycles have completely taken over as far as the national conversations. I feel like that's all we have anymore. I feel like because we've lost our local newspapers, because we're losing, local TV news to regional and statewide and national, we're really losing that community conversation. And I really think that that's something that we need to focus on, whether it be modern money, whatever it is. Take all that and then take it with you into your community. So I really wanted to talk about that today. I also wanted to say, I'm pontificating here, but I live in an area that's directly benefited from the job programs of the 30s, 40s, and 50s. We built dams. We built an irrigation. We irrigated a desert. We're now the land of 1,000 wineries. Washington State grows over 300 varieties of crops, and that is all because of a federally paid job program that lasted decades. And I just feel, and I know that other regions of the country have been just as affected by those old programs that we don't have anymore. But, with the crisis that we have with COVID, we have lost so many healthcare workers, either because they've left because they're just exhausted or they've died And if we don't get a job program, not only for the infrastructure, we have the bills in Congress sitting there, but that's not enough. It's not enough. We need the job program. And I just, I wanted to highlight that today.
But when you say job program, what you're thinking of is the job guarantee.
Correct. Yeah. Whereas in the past we had like the WPA, we need something like that today. We need like World War II when they trained all those nurses, all that medical staff.
Yes.
We can do this. And
Yes.
I can't stress enough how dire it is for healthcare workers right now. Just, we were stretched thin and pushed to the edge before COVID. And now it's like biblical proportions of exhaustion. It's just crazy. We need some fiscal sanity. We need a job guarantee right now.
Amber, are you a nurse?
I am a nursing assistant.
Okay, so you're frontline clinical staff. Can I ask you, like, I'm worried about you guys. I don't know how much you know about me, Amber, but I worked in hospice for a really long time, hospice and home health. I was the finance director, but, very hands-on, quality control, the whole thing, quality review, billing, training, all of it. And we had 700 patients all told that we had all over across the state. And since COVID hit, at first all we did was talk about the frontline clinicians. And now this second wave is like looking for all intents and purposes to be just as bad and maybe getting worse than the first go round.
It is.
We're not talking about any of that. We're not talking about you guys at all. And it's terrifying to me. Once in a while we'll hear something, but it's almost like people have tuned it out. And
oh yeah,
I don't know what to do about it. But especially like where are you exactly? Like, are you Spokane area or Soap Lake out that way, or where?
Farther south. I'm in the southeastern quarter in the Tri-Cities.
In your Tri-Cities. Okay, we used to go golfing out. Yeah. So, like, what is even your population in your area?
We are around 300,000.
Yeah. Okay.
Roughly, relegated to the three cities. There's sprawling rural areas, all around us. Huge agricultural area, but concentrated, in the urban area, it's around 300,000.
So,
and
okay. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Amber. Do you have enough facilities?
There's never enough facilities really, but there's more of an effort to keep people in their homes versus the facilities. That's what I specialize in now. I've done hospice work, very, very dear to my heart. But I've worked in every type of facility, adult family homes, rehabilitation. I can do a lot of different things, but there's been like I said, much more of an effort to keep people in their homes and just keep them out of the facilities altogether. But unfortunately, not everybody can afford that. That's it's so expensive. Elder care is so ridiculously expensive. If you want a private room in, like the 5-star places, you're talking $10,000 a month, and that's not an exaggeration.
Oh no, I know.
It's just ridiculous. But as far as the healthcare workers, and I worked in facilities where we trained students as well. So I've helped train, hundreds of students, and so I have lots of healthcare contacts all over the city and all the hospitals and the different facilities, and they're all saying the same thing. It's getting a little better with the elders, only because they were vaccinated first, But the hospitals are completely overrun. And again, this is where it comes into where Washington State's so different from the western to the eastern side. We have a lot of anti-vaxxers over here. And unfortunately, because of that, the hospitals are just absolutely overrun.
Oh my God. That's awful.
It is. It's terrible.
How's the income level? Do you have a lot of, do you have a decent amount of people who are down and out? Like, are you got a lot of food lines and things like that right now, or no?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have Second Harvest over here, and they're absolutely working gangbusters. This time of the year, we're a little bit more better off because there's so much agriculture. Lots of farmers donate, fresh produce. And of course, you can take your EBT and you can go to the farmer's market. You can purchase seeds. But yeah, no, the food banks are definitely working overtime. And our homeless population has only grown.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
It's only gotten bigger, and it just keeps getting bigger. Yeah, it's pretty dire, I think.
So what kind of organizing efforts have you done anything like this before? Like where you're trying really to get out there for the first time into the community and try and figure out how to tap in?
I have been really fortunate to work with an organization called Incarceration to Inspiration. It was started by a gentleman named Richard Linderman, who unfortunately passed away of COVID at the beginning of the month.
Oh, no.
But he documented his entire experience once he entered the hospital and even into the ICU, and became a staunch advocate for vaccination, and basically convinced a huge chunk of people down here in the Tri-Cities to get vaccinated. So kudos to Richard for that. But that's more community outreach. So, helping people in need, that kind of thing. Not so much the political aspect, because our city council and our elected officials are so conservative over here. But it's time to get out there, and where I've spent a lot of time learning about modern money and more focused on that national conversation,
Yes.
and building a lot of great contacts, which is wonderful. I've made so many friends and, learned so much through them. It's time to refocus and recenter and get myself into more local activism. And I feel like that's going to carry the message further in the long run. I think if we all, kind of get behind that. So that's kind of where I'm at.
So Amber, your community outreach, that's a great way to organize people. The question then becomes like, what do you want to organize people around? And I'm not going to pretend to know what your first thing would be. However, talking about whole Washington to folks who are in food lines is a really easy start. And then once you can like make people aware that that ballot and that legislation is there, we're going to try and get it a hearing, get it through a committee hearing, public hearing, and talking to people about what are their latest. I mean, if they're in food lines, they're obviously probably going to love the idea of the healthcare initiative, right? What else? Is it jobs? Is it housing? What is it? What are those things? And do they have the resources to turn to help them? And as you find all this stuff out, right, then your next place to go would be your local municipal leaders, right? Your city council or your township committees or whatever that might be, because I'm not presuming to know because you're out in the Tri-Cities. So I don't know. Do you have mayors? Do you have How does that even work out there? Do you have county councils?
We do. Yeah. We have city council, mayor. I'm actually, and that's kind of, I've spent some time kind of cultivating relationships with some of these local people. I'm friends with the local district attorney. I'm friends with the deputy mayor, who's also the owner of our only dispensary, marijuana dispensary, because it's so conservative over here. Whereas you can go to the western side of the state and there's dispensaries everywhere. You come down to the Tri-Cities, the conservative side of the state, and there's one, maybe two. But I've made friends with that gentleman. His name's Stephen Lee. Local business owners, and like I said, community organizers. And I think that healthcare would be
Sure.
my most priority behind modern money, as far as they support each other. The understanding of that we can't afford to do this.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. I've kind of gone soft gloves, easy, because I don't want to mess up any relationships right now. Like, I want to build rapport,
Yes.
more rapport. But I am excited to get, more serious about diving into, really, really showing people and having more public events down here. More, I don't want to call them protests, but, rallies and things like that, to be more vocal and in the public eye, outside of, just doing community outreach, helping people. I can help people and show them what's going on at the same time.
Right. So when you get into organizing the rallies, will the thrust of the rallies be to support a national Medicare for All program, a state single payer program, or both?
Well, I am for fight on all fronts. We live in an oligarchy. We have corrupt politicians. And so we need to try everything that we possibly can. My brother went bankrupt and destitute when my niece died of cancer in 2004. She was 9 years old, and he lost everything. And why wouldn't I fight for, people on the state level to be able to have some modicum of, not decency, but,
dignity.
the word, I've lost the word. But, my poor brother, there's no reason why we shouldn't fight on all fronts to help people wherever they are. And we know that we can afford it. It's not a question of money. So my thrust would be
So we're going to fight
on all fronts. Absolutely.
Yeah. So when you first heard the arguments from the other side, from our friends on the other side, what did you think was wrong with those arguments that led you to conclude that it was best to fight, on all fronts?
Well, the argument that they make really is based in a lot of future forward speculation, as far as, well, it's going to go this way, it's going to go that way. And it just felt like it was kind of disingenuous in a way. It's like they completely forget, how the government operates, as far, not how the money flows, but, our Congress and our politicians. And you would have to primary all of these people in Congress in order to get what you want. And not only that, once even if you pass the law, it would take a really long time to implement. It's not like the ACA, where it got pushed through because Obama was appeasing the corporations. It's not the same thing. And I don't know, it just feels like they're kind of cutting a lot of the grassroots, they're mowing the grassroots is what they're doing.
Yes.
Versus let's grow the grassroots. And the way that they turned people off, and the way that they don't want to acknowledge that they turned people off, as far as modern money, and they don't give any credit to the people who are actively learning, or give them time or space. And so I just feel like I hope that they can get to a place where they want to help us instead of hinder us. Because we're certainly not trying to hinder them.
Yeah.
So since I asked you that question, would you like to ask me the same question?
Well, of course, Joe.
Okay. The way I would answer it is that the state governments, our governments, they do have some power. They do have power to tax. They do have power to raise funding. They do have appreciable populations. There are many nations with smaller populations than the smallest of the United States. And yet, many of these nations don't have a problem with giving their people a universal coverage at low cost for healthcare. It might be a Medicare for All program. It could be a national health service. They have a national health service, okay, on Malta, and they don't even have their own currency. They use the English pound. Their population is 449,000 people. There's no state here in the United States with a smaller population than 449,000 people. All of our states have larger populations. How is it they can afford a national health service, and we can't? So when reflecting on those international facts, it just seemed to me that the argument from fiscal unsustainability couldn't be that strong, because lots of other nations that also have a fiscal sustainability problem because they don't have their own currency, or because of the Eurozone, and they gave up their currencies, they still managed to maintain much better healthcare systems than we have, and at far lower cost. So it just seemed to me the decisive factor in having these kinds of healthcare systems is not fiscal sustainability or unsustainability. It has more to do with politics, okay, and with political choices that people are making, okay, in these units. And I just didn't see what could be a more important political choice than having a Medicare for All program, okay, a Medicare for All system, keeping your people healthy and safe. It's about the physical security of your citizens. Seems to me if all these other places could afford it, domestically, our states can also afford it. And if they can't afford it, it's because they're making poor political choices to begin with. It's not because of some inherent problem of fiscal unsustainability at that level. So that's why I started to argue in favor of whole Washington and single payer at the state level. I just didn't find the RP arguments to be credible.
Well, and it just seems crazy that, it's not like the way they talk, it's like they expect the entire program to be paid by the state. from my understanding, you know, we're going to take the taxes collected or whatever, and it's like the reallocation of some what people are already paying. It's not like the state is covering everything. And
Right.
it just seems like a lot of their arguments, they pinpoint on disingenuous points sometimes with you know, the pay fors. You know, they seem to hinge it, the state's going to do it all, and that's not true. There's lots of different pay fors in that bill. It's not all going to be paid by the state.
Yes, in fact, it seems to me likely that the state will not pay more than 25% of the eventual cost. So it's that low. I saw some figures that seem to indicate that, first of all, single payer would produce 33% of savings. So let's say we were talking about a total cost of $100 billion under the present system. With savings of perhaps 33%, that brings the cost down to $67 billion. The supposedly available federal funds for supporting state programs, okay, in one way or another, comes to something like 70 to 75%, 70 to 75% of the $67 billion, which leaves, when you do the arithmetic, something like maybe $21 billion left as a cost that the state has to pick up through some sort of a taxing mechanism. In Whole Washington's case, the taxing mechanism seems to be mostly payroll taxes, either levied on the individuals, okay, or levied on the businesses. There are some premiums that are paid, but those, okay, are relatively low in terms of the total amount of money, but they yield. I mean, maybe 1 or 2% of the total, something like that, okay, is accounted for by the premiums. So from the standpoint of the individuals who are paying the payroll taxes and the businesses that are paying the payroll taxes, it always comes down to what is that payroll tax going to cost me, and is it going to cost me as much as what I'm spending now in the present system? If it's going to cost me less than I'm spending now, and I'm getting fully covered by a single payer system, then I am better off. And this applies both at the individual level and also applies at the level of the business. If I'm paying 15 to 17% of salary for healthcare coverage under the present system, and I'm only going to pay 8.5% if I switch to the whole Washington system, then it's really a no-brainer for me. I should certainly be shifting.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's something that I definitely want to drive that home with some of our local business owners, you know, that tend to be more conservative. I think that would be a huge selling point for people over here.
Yes, I think so.
I agree with you, Amber. And, you know, I think that one of the important pieces of this puzzle, when we start talking or trying to explain how we're going to pay for even this bill, right, without diving all the way down into the weeds, that's what Cindy Jacobson's going to talk about, right, when she comes on. Am I saying that right? Is it
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
hopefully she's going to talk about that.
But like when we went out in Hilltop, Amber, and canvassed, what we were really fortunate to do is have there was just a couple of blocks and there were just businesses on both sides of the street, and they were all kinds of businesses, bakeries, coffee shops. There were community churches on corners. There were clothing stores, record stores. I mean, I could keep going. There was just, you name it, it was up there, right? And they were all small businesses. They weren't large chains or anything. And when we went in there, we would ask people, hey, hi, we're the Red Berets. We're up here. We're doing this and that demonstration or whatever it was. And we'd start talking to the small business owners and we'd say, how would you feel about the state itself being able to enact a universal coverage, single payer healthcare? The business owners immediately, their eyes get big, because anyone who's running their own business understands that, like, aside from their mortgage, their healthcare is huge for them, right? And then student loans if they've got those. Their employees, small businesses can't afford to offer their employees healthcare, right? So oftentimes they have part-time employees, because anybody looking for a full-time job is really looking for somebody that's going to pay them benefits. Anyhow, back to my original point. When you start talking about how this is going to get funded, I think we need to all make it the go-to that it will save individuals and small businesses significant amount of money, right? And we've got that calculator out on the website that you can go to, where people can actually punch in what they're paying now, and it'll spit out what they would pay under this system. And it's, unless I'm wrong, I believe it'll do it for businesses and for individuals, right? Once people start to understand that, yes, your Medicare tax, your payroll tax will increase, but your premiums and your co-pays and your maximum out of pocket deductibles, all of that junk, right? That all goes away. Even your drug prices will be under a plan that is going to be very helpful and conducive to everyone being in a better place when it comes to that. We should lead with that. We should lead with the fact that the average person that you are talking to will pay less for their health care than they're paying now, and they will have much better coverage, right? Because it's going to grab your hearing, it's going to grab your dental, it's going to grab your vision. Lead with that, because that's another piece of this puzzle, that when people are thinking about what they pay for their health care, they're thinking about their premiums. You have to remind them about the deductible piece often. You have to remind them about their co-pays. You have to remind them about their prescription drug costs. But what they don't think about in this equation is that dental's a whole other animal for them. So is vision, right? So is hearing. And you want to touch on those things and bring them into the conversation in the beginning, before we go getting down into the weeds of, do we need waivers? Don't we need waivers, if that conversation comes up? Because the truth of the matter is, if every single person in the state of Washington decoupled their health care from their employer, saved themselves as a business and as individuals significant amounts of money, and had coverage, good coverage that they could count on for every individual in the family, do you have any idea what that would do for the state? The state's
The economy would boom.
Oh, it would go through the roof, right? And anyone who is conservative, Amber, that's your talk. That's it. Because that's right up everybody's alley, right? You don't have to worry so much when you're talking about this, when you're talking about a policy that's not only going to save small business, right? Now you're talking to conservatives. immediately, right? Especially in rural areas. Small businesses, your family, decoupling healthcare from the employer. You can't lose. You can't lose if you hit that argument and come at it from that trajectory first. And then let them start asking the questions, right? But you cut off at the knees this idea that gets thrown up in our faces that, well, you're going to raise payroll taxes. Yeah, it's kind of like, go and look up the July 13th macaroni and cheese sound recording. Randall Ray, L. Randall Ray, was interviewed by Steve Rombine in that.
Mm-hmm.
Randall Ray's on our side.
Yes, he is.
The speech I just gave you, I plucked out some cherries that Randall gave me and just laid them down in here. I embellished them, of course, but he's on our side. So I don't even know where they're coming from, coming at us with this whole idea. Like, he was asked, don't you think it's a bad idea? I mean, if you passed a state single payer plan, a bunch of, what would stop a bunch of people from all over the country moving into your state? And he giggled and he said, that's exactly what we want to have happen. I mean, we've got the winning argument here. The rest of it, as far as I'm concerned, is petty noise.
All right. So the approach you gave, I think, is very, very good, Lisa. I think that is the way we should lead. There's another very important thing to emphasize. Okay, and I think that thing is the security. In other words, in the present situation, even people who have coverage have to worry about the balance billings, the unexpected things, okay, that happen. The idea that the insurance company is able to pull the rug out from you, at any time. Suddenly you're not insurable. Something has happened, and you're not insurable. Or they do some investigation and they find some obscure thing in your past that you failed to mention in the application you gave them, and suddenly they won't pay a bill. All that stuff just goes away with the single payer program, with the single payer system. You always know you're covered. You're covered, okay, from cradle to grave. Your children are covered. Your whole family, okay, is covered. You go to the doctor and you don't get co-pays, but there are no deductibles. In the whole Washington situation, there are some premiums. For people who can afford it, there are premiums of $200 a month. But for people who can't afford it, they won't have to pay premiums, okay, at all. So for them, it's going to be even like the federal program was. Here's Lisa. She knocked out for a minute, I think, to try to
Yeah, and you don't have to lose your home because you can't afford medical bills.
Yes, you're always protected against that. And that is a really, really outstanding thing that you can sell people on.
Yeah.
And so that, and then the conservative approach, okay, of selling them on the costs. If you add, but to the lower costs, the idea of security and the idea, okay, of better care. And I think for most people, it's a deal they cannot really turn down. It just wouldn't be sensible for them to turn it down.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. I think, approaching it with the right selling points is really important. It's just with some audiences, you have to, because of who I am, very outspoken, leftist, I have to tread carefully with getting these ideas in, because they automatically have biases, because the national political, space has been taken over, by the mainstream media. They see me as an enemy. So, that's why I've spent so much time building a rapport with some of these folks, so that when I do say these things, they don't look at me like I'm a total loony, or some, I'm here with some socialist communist agenda.
Amber, are you talking about yourself from the standpoint of being a clinician, or what? How are you? Because why?
As far as approaching people with these selling points, approaching conservatives with selling points of single payer and whole Washington, not necessarily as a clinician, because when it comes to my interactions as a professional, I don't really bring my politics into that. I keep that boundary with my clients and patients, but no, just speaking how conservatives identify people like me, I've heard it in my city councils. They parrot Fox News quite often. But because I've spent time, building rapport with some of these folks, I feel like now is the time to approach them with the correct selling points. Because it is a good thing.
It is a good thing.
I'm just curious though, Amber, how do people identify you as something other than a conservative? Do they know that? And you don't wear that on your sleeve. How would they identify you that way?
Well, because I do interact with my city council and I am out there in the community, my face is known. A lot of people do know who I am and what I represent. I wear my MMT t-shirts around town.
That's
yeah, no, it's not a bad thing. It's a great way to start a conversation in line at the grocery store, let me tell you.
What is MMT? And then you have to explain it.
Monetary policy and fiscal policy. I don't see that being a turnoff. I really don't. I guess I'm just trying to empower you on the idea that you should not necessarily perceive yourself as others perceiving you in any certain way, right?
Sure. No, but it's just like, know your audience. Know your, know the audience that you're working with type of situation. And
now's the best time to do it because we don't have an election sitting in, 3 months away, major election coming. We have midterms coming up. This, I really tell you, a lot of people do. They get into the communities when the elections are going on and when there's big, bold issues out in front that have been divisive over the last so many years. And now is the time, I just believe, right now, get out there, get on the ground, talk to people when you don't have to sell them on a candidate, or you're not trying to get them to buy into a candidate. You're just talking about issues and you're meeting people where they are. This is a great time for that because people aren't on the defense or on the offense.
I agree.
It's a great time for that, if not for COVID.
Well, yes and no. I mean, there are places that people go outdoors that you can run into people. The weather's not bad yet. And,
yes,
community organizations, I don't know, food lines or distributions are usually outside. There are ways around it. If you have masks on and you're, outside, you'll be fine. There are ways to contact people that aren't, knocking on people's doors and walking in their homes. You don't have to even do it. If you do it out in a parking lot or you go to the food line of distribution or wherever you're going, there's ways to do it.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah. Yes, I also suppose, okay, in Amber's area, they're probably a little more casual about certain things, okay, at this point.
Yeah, very much so. Much to the chagrin of the rest of the state.
Yes, yes, but I suppose one of the positive things is they may be easier to talk to.
Yeah, there's never really a lack of people. I still have to be out and about no matter what. My job did not change at all. With COVID, how I have to approach my job changed, but not the workload at all. I I've been
But,
working the whole time, so I see a lot of people in the community.
question, how do you keep yourself safe?
Try to take care of myself. My own immune system. I am fully vaccinated. So is all my family. Even my 13-year-old son, he's vaccinated, fully vaccinated.
Great.
And we haven't had so much of an issue with PPE. I don't know why. I don't know why it's so different from state to state and from area to area, which doesn't seem right. There should be some kind of national help with that, regulation with that. But we've had really good PPE protection here. All of our clients and our patients, for the most part, the ones that I interact with, because I work more with elderly now.
Yes.
So I'm not as at risk, but I have lots of friends and professional colleagues who are in the hospitals, and they say it's a nightmare. So, but yeah, so far I've been good. I had a head cold about a month or so ago, but I didn't test positive or anything. So far as I know, I've never had never had COVID. So.
Yeah, same here. I've never had COVID. We've been very careful, and we too, okay, are fully vaccinated here. And we were fully vaccinated as soon as we possibly could get it.
Good. I'm glad.
We have a Kaiser Permanente plan here, the Mid-Atlantic, okay, in the United States. Basically Maryland, Virginia, okay, and DC right now, okay, are covered by the Kaiser plan. And I think maybe the Kaiser plan here is better than the one in California. We don't hear the same kinds of complaints here that we've heard about, okay, in California, like people discharged from the hospital too quickly, or anything like that. And we've had that care now for years and years, and it's been really good care. And they've been on top of COVID also, very, very careful about it. They're very careful when you go to the facility. But people are masked. Okay, the doctors, okay, and nurses, okay, often, okay, are double masked, as a matter of fact. And so we learned it was best to do that for ourselves. So when we walk into stores or something like that, we wear the usual face mask, and then we wear another plastic mask that covers everything.
Your face shield.
Yeah. So when we walk into Costco, especially because so many people there crowded there, that is what we do. And we've been able to keep safe. It's been a difficult time because we've had to restrict contacts with our grandchildren through this period, which is very lonely and very painful, of course. But other than that, it's really been a pretty good time for us.
That's good.
And we've been lucky thus far.
That's good. Yeah, it's really hard for me personally. My parents, refuse to get vaccinated. They're for the ivermectin, and you can just imagine everything else from there. So very, very opposite spectrums as far as our approach to COVID. So it makes it hard, you know.
Do they
My dad,
stay on a regimen, Amber?
no, they're not on any regimen or anything. They've never had COVID so far, but they're very much pro ivermectin and anti vaccination. And it makes it hard, you know, because they want to see us more. They don't like it when we wear the masks around them. It makes it hard.
Yes.
And I imagine a lot of families have gone through similar.
Yeah.
I've got exactly the opposite thing going on here as you do, Amber, in my family. But all around me, we have people that believe like your parents do, right? And we've been lucky because, I mean, we really did get lucky. The school system that I have here, for the most part, under a lot of pushback, did the right thing last year. You know, all the kids were vaccinated. They did limited rotating schools. As far as half the kids were in class and half the kids were out of class, and they rotated every other day. But this year, all the kids are back in school. They are wearing masks. But out in the community, up until very recently, nobody had masks on. Like I'd be walking around with my masks on, going in and out of stores, and my husband would, because we just did it. We have, all of our parents are alive, compromised immune systems, much older, right? And it was never a question. We just masked up and made darn sure that we weren't out mingling in the population for any longer of a period of time than was absolutely necessary, right? But anyhow, getting back to this year, all the kids are in school. There's not even 3 feet social distancing between them. That's guaranteed, right? And I just got a telephone call this afternoon that my kid has been
Okay, I think Lisa's been fading out a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really hard. My daughter graduated high school last year doing remote learning for the whole year. Now my son is autistic, so he was able to go to school 4 days a week, even last year. And he's back full time this year. But very, very, very hard. I feel for parents. I mean, it's hard, you know, to make that decision. Do I send my kid? Don't I? Lots of kids, you know, the age range is dropping with the unvaccinated as far as deaths go, you know, and hospitalizations, it's going lower, you know, because
Yes.
the older folks are heavily vaccinated, whereas, you know, not so much with the other ages. So I feel for parents. I really do. I immediately, my son's almost 14, so it was no issue. Jay Inslee, our governor, said, you know, 12-year-olds go. So as soon as I could, I took him.
Yeah, very
I'm
wise.
scared to death.
Very important. Yeah, we're scared to death as well. Our grandchildren are vaccinated as well. Our son, and daughter-in-law are vaccinated. Our daughter in Los Angeles, is vaccinated, which we are happy to know, of course. You know, because we thought that was a dangerous place. But she's very cautious. She's lucky to have a job that she can do on the internet. So mostly she only has to go out for food and for socializing from time to time. But she's been able to do well during the crisis as well. Okay, I'm not sure Lisa, okay, is coming back. She was having a problem with the connection. Okay, and so she left. But I think it's time for us to go to the comments anyway. And I think there are going to be an awful lot of comments because I think our discussion turned out to be a very good one, which I thought, I thought it was certainly going to be a very good one. And I think it was. So,
Me too.
good. Okay, so let's get back. I read some of the initial comments through about 9:14, 9:15. 9:17. Okay, I guess. Oh, there's Amber. She's probably going to come in again. Okay. So Laura said, "Hi there, you beautiful Red Berets." And Jeff Denton said, "I don't hear any." Ghostot says, "When will AOC wear a Medicare?" Ah, here's Amber back. Thank you for coming back, Amber. So Steve, or Ghostot, says, "When will AOC wear a Medicare for all dress with a red beret?" And Russ says, "The static isn't too distracting on this end." Thank you, Russell. Lana asks whether QE was new dollars or simply reserves, okay, to encourage the banks to lend. And the answer is they were new dollars and just reserves also. In other words, they were creating new dollars and sending the reserves to the banks so that their liquidity position would be strengthened. That was what they had in mind. They thought there was a liquidity crisis. Solana says the hilarious part of the rating agencies is that they downrated the U.S. government. Yes, that was hilarious when that happened. It showed that they needed to hire some MMT people to put them in the credit agencies because that was totally ridiculous. They evidently didn't understand that the 14th Amendment does not allow the federal government to go bankrupt. Kay says, "If we had known then what I know now, Scott and I would have rehabbed homes for ourselves instead of others." And Lana thought she'd heard some typing, whether Bonnie was typing. No, Bonnie wasn't. A number of people thought they were hearing computer clips, but clicks. No, that wasn't going on. I think the static was coming from our mics because but later on in the live stream, I tried to successively mute either myself, or Lisa, and I didn't find anything was going on. With Amber's stream, that didn't seem to be creating any echoes. But I think the clicks you were hearing had something to do with the interaction of my stream, with Lisa's stream. And the reason why I think that is that I successively shut off either myself, or sometimes, I went to Lisa's mic, and I muted that. And sometimes that would work as well to cut off the clicks. So something was going on in terms of an interaction. I don't know what was causing it tonight. The last time that we had a conversation, that wasn't occurring. So it must have had something to do with the telephone. But I know it isn't really necessarily to do with the telephone, because I think Amber is coming in on telephone also, aren't you, Amber?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right. And we're not having any conflicts, with Amber's telephone. So I don't know what accounts for the difference. Maybe we'll be able to work it out in the future. I hope so. Carmen thought maybe there was hacking going on, I guess. We're always led to think that. Somehow we always think that they're listening in on us, and yeah, maybe they are, but I'm not really too paranoid about that. And maybe I'm mistaken in not being too paranoid about it. So Laura says, go start to answer your question about when will AOC wear Medicare for all dress and a red beret. My answer is most likely when the hell freezes over. Oh, I'm getting some clicks now. I don't know what was causing that. Lana said, I wish they had been as concerned about the liquidity of the people as much as the lending institutions. Yes, I think so too. Unfortunately, I don't think they conceive their jobs as involving seeing to the liquidity of people, only seeing to the liquidity of the banking system and the stability of the banking system. We ought to change the Fed law so that they're concerned with the liquidity of people. That would be very good, I think. But did you have something you wanted to add?
Oh, no, I was just adjusting my earpiece here. No, you're good.
Okay. Carmen says, that's why I never say, oh, I love him, her, when it comes to politicians or celebrities. Carmen says, Lana, is that you at home banking work clicks bleeding through? Lana says, no, but I definitely hear it, but very odd. No, I think it was happening even before Lana joined. Kay says, does sound like someone is typing. Carmen says, the phantom clicker. Carmen says, oh, God, Lana, you're going to raise Rachel Mad Cow from the dead Russia gating. Carmen says, Russia and Mad Cow reunited. Early Halloween horror. It wasn't, but Russian folks was my favorite meme. Lana said, I was always horrified about the 125% loan to value second liens. Cringe. Yeah, those were really dangerous, weren't they? Lana says, retaxes sometimes. In California, they have caps on the appreciation for property tax. That's probably a good thing. Lana says, depends on how they value the property. A few years ago, I called on a tax bill in Bronx or Brooklyn. They were using 30% of the value, not the full value. Yeah, there probably would have been a revolution if they were using full value there, because those properties have just gone up enormously in paper value, but the people who live there, you know, can't afford to pay based on the paper value, especially not the working people who have owned homes for a long time. Red Berets, Medicare for all. Laura says, great to see you, Amber. Sorry, I am fading in and out of the convo because I'm needing to pull clip time segments from the strategy panel discussion we did a couple of weeks ago. But Lisa took part in it. Yes, that was a terrific session, Laura. It was really wonderful. It really did convey the national concerns, okay? And I mean, it proved that the concerns, okay, of the Red Beret movement are national as well as in Washington. It confirmed everybody is interested in fighting, okay, on all fronts. And Carmen says, it's that GIF cat going ham on the keyboard trying to get Photobomb's attention. And Red Beret says, also Ophelia from Twitter, more than likely. I don't see how that can get in here. Lana says, help me, Rhonda, and a Shakespeare legend. But laugh out loud. I'm not sure what the reference was in that comment, Lana. Fran Bauer says, Ophelia is going. I think that means going to the vigil. And Laura asks, are you meeting Cindy Jacobs, Joe? Yes, I am. Did I not say Cindy Jacobs? Fran Bauer says, OPO Mom on Twitter, and she gives the Twitter link. Comment says, sorry, Lana, I'm lost on the help me Rhonda Shakespeare comment. No clue. Jeff Denton says, that's awesome, Fran. And my phone didn't even call you Frank. But Dolores and Donna Marie Miller, Ellington, are in Florida as well. Perhaps we should just charter a plane. Who said that? Oh, Jeffrey Denton said that. Lana says, Joe and Lisa mentioned Rhonda. Yes, we did. And Lana points out the Red Berets mentioned Ophelia. I think that's Laura. Okay, thanks. Hard to hear with the clicks. Yeah, from time to time it was hard to hear. Does Lisa and Amber hear the clicking? I don't know whether Amber heard the clicking. Did you hear the clicking, Amber?
I did.
Yeah. There's no clicking now, is there?
No, none at all.
None at all, yeah. Alana says, hashtag job guarantee. Carmen says, can the federal government, and military medical personnel to help in the hospitals with COVID-19? Because of the Mu and Nipah variants are coming. Yes, we don't know much about them yet, though, do we, Carmen? Carmen points out the morticians are burned out as well. Goddamn Trump. And Lana says the healthcare workers are really having a rough time. They're burning out. I know. I'm afraid that I still believe that the 1 million deaths, and I believe it is 1 million deaths. The Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation, at the University of Washington, says we're over 1 million deaths now, and I think they're right. I know they're measuring it, in a different way. I think that is the correct way to measure it. But anyway, I think the 1 million deaths were due to the initial response, and that.
Sorry, I'm okay.
That's quite all right. Okay, and it was due to the initial response, and that it wasn't strong, and vigorous, and had no concern for stopping the spread of the virus here in the United States. If they had followed the example of a New Zealand, we would have only a very small fraction, of those deaths. They have 5 fatalities per million. So what does that actually work out to there? I don't know, probably 1,700 or 1,800 fatalities versus a million. How can you consider that as anything but a colossal failure of the United States government? And I still don't think that we in America perceive it that way. We somehow don't imagine that things could have been very, very different. Isn't it just incredible ignorance out there? And Dolores says, right now I'm in Vestal, New York. I'm hoping to get back to Florida at some point in time. Dolores, Bonnie and I lived in Vestal, New York when I was teaching and doing research at SUNY Binghamton from 1971 through 1975. And we still have some fond memories of Vestal, I think. Not a bad place to live, by any means. Steve says there's 17 million vacant homes. Steve Gonzo, that is, says that. Carmina says China was rolling their COVID patients outside for sunshine. D3 is vital. We take plenty of D3. I think we each take about 6,000 units a day, 6,000 IUs. I think that's helped us to stay well. Steve says, Massachusetts sending National Guard to drive school buses. Go Start says, wow. Or I'm sorry, that was Lana saying to Go Start. Wow. Go Start, by the way, is Steve Gonzo. Carmen Yunus says children need to stay home under the ABC Act / bill. Carmen, are you talking to the Automatic Boost to Communities Act? That, unfortunately, was never passed. Carmen Yunus says, wow, Amber, you're so phenomenal. And Carmen says, COVID in prison is damn near a death sentence. Okay, says what part of Florida? Dolores Pierce, and Dolores says Spring Hill, Florida area. It's about 45 minutes north of Tampa. Steve said, I lost a ton of nurse friends made in 2016 when Facebook deleted me. And Kay says, nice part, Kay, of Florida. I have no idea where Spring Hill is. Did you say Spring Hill? I think you did. Yes, Spring Hill, Florida area. Have no idea where that is. I don't know Florida too well. Once we went down to Fort Lauderdale for a visit, and I guess I was to Jacksonville one time when I was running a panel for the Department of Agriculture. And they sent me down there. It was kind of like a focus group type of panel. But we didn't call it that. It involved a methodology that my friends and I invented. And we refer to it as group value measurement technique. And we once went down to Jacksonville to use the group value measurement technique. It was fun. Kay says, nice part of Florida. Kay says, I used to go to Paso Grill in the 70s a lot. Had a friend from Ohio who lived there. Back then was a Democratic state and was wonderful. Yeah, those were the days. What was the name of the senator? Howard. I don't think it was Scheinman, but he was senator for quite a long time and a very good senator. And Carmen says, oh my God, the clicking paused at 10:34, and this was at 10:35. It's back. I think that was correlated to when someone muted their sound and then turned it back on. Probably either myself, okay, or Lisa. Okay, so looking at what Florida has become under GOP rule, it's damn sad. And Laura said, I really shouldn't laugh at macaroni and cheese, by laugh out loud, laugh out loud about the macro and cheese. And maybe I wouldn't be laughing if there wasn't some mocking of the berets that require hours to make, and we raise funds with them. Yeah, maybe you wouldn't be laughing out loud, but there's no harm in laughing out loud. Kay says GOP has ruined North Carolina too. Damn sad. And the law says, not to mention the intent to build, create solidarity. I think the recent effort to make fun of us and pour cold water on good organizers is reprehensible. Dividing the ground game. Poor strategy. Very damaging strategy. It really is a very damaging strategy. Jeff Denton says, Dolores Pierce, I'm just glad that I got you on as an editor by way of the Florida page, because Judy isn't very open-minded, okay, or progressive. Lisa's coming back. Hello, Lisa.
Hey, I'm sorry, my phone running StreamYard drained the battery even though it's plugged in. So I don't know how long I'm going to be able to hang, but I figured I'd log back in just for whatever's left.
Okay, thank you for allowing logging back in. We're very glad to see you. Okay, of course. So we're running through the comments now. And so Jeff says he wants to make but Dolores the admin on a few more pages on the East Coast, and any more groups where you aren't actually already an admin. And but Dolores is the admin of many, many groups, I think. I don't know how many. Okay, but I think it's really amazing what she can do. Ghostot says, put a feather in your cap. It ain't easy being cheesy. And Laura says, sounds great. Jeffrey, Lana says, I dislike all the infighting, such a waste of energy. And Kay asks you, where is Lisa from?
Originally, I'm from Erie, Pennsylvania, born and raised.
Okay.
And then I moved to Philly, and then I lived in Washington State, Kitsap County for 19 years, and now I'm in Wexford outside of Pittsburgh, PA. Came back home.
Okay. But not completely back home because you didn't go back to Erie, right?
No, but I am halfway, not really, but I'm on the flight path of Erie where my parents both live, and my sisters are in DC. I've got another sister in Baltimore. So I'm easy from here.
So when you come down to DC, then you can look us up, right?
You know what, Joe? I need to do that because I am down there. My sister's in Rockville area, but right on the border into Potomac. She's technically in Potomac, but more Rockville. Yeah. So you're in Virginia, right?
Yeah, we are very close to Leesburg, Virginia, just
Yeah.
east, okay, of Leesburg, Virginia.
So what? Are you like an hour from DC?
Well, it all depends on the traffic. In other words, if
Yeah.
traffic is good, it could be 45 minutes. If the traffic's bad, it can be, say an hour and 15 minutes. We're 35 minutes from Tyson's Corner.
Okay. Yeah, you're about probably an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes from my sister on a bad traffic day.
On a bad traffic day, yeah. But at a good traffic time, we can probably make it to Rockville in roughly 50 minutes, maybe.
No, that's nothing.
Yes, because but if we go by Georgetown Pike and catch the Beltway there, it's only a few minutes to Rockville from there. It's not bad.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yep. I could do that. I would love to come see you.
Great. Now we'll arrange it.
Yes, absolutely.
And Jeffrey says she's in Pennsylvania, but I don't know if she's originally from there. Well, you got that information now. And I said that you lived in Pennsylvania and you used to live in Washington. I had the feeling you were from Pennsylvania, but I thought you mentioned that, but I had forgotten it was from Erie, Pennsylvania.
I've been following Joseph Biden's political career for 40 some years. So yeah, I'm from here, unfortunately.
And Lana says, whoever was typing in the background has suddenly signed out. Hooray. And KRTD Media says, hey, Shane, I assume that's you. And Kay says, Pa is a mess too. Sorry to hear that, Kay. Oh, Pennsylvania is a mess too. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Carmen said, think the clicking stopped completely. Yes, great convo tonight. Thank you, Carmen. And Dolores says, noticed a lot of people not wearing masks and under the assumption because they are vaccinated, they no longer need to be cautious. Also, I cover my hand when I pump gas. I notice other people now pumping gas with their bare hand. I continue with my vitamin and also nutrition regimen to keep a strong immune system. Some people sadly think the vaccine is magic. Yes, I agree. They just think, okay, it's magic. We use a lot of hand sanitizer when getting in and out of our car. Uh, Kay says, here in Ohio, we are rising in cases daily. Shake my head. There are many anti-maskers here. Yeah, we're rising daily in cases here, even though there are not so many anti-maskers here. The Delta variant is just, I mean, it's just awful from the contagion point of view. And everybody, Kay, is going up. Somebody mentioned this morning that the fatalities had reached 2,000 again per day. I hadn't seen that. I haven't. I'm taking a look at the Worldometer site for a few days. I guess I better go check in with that and see what's going on, especially in this state. Jeff Denton says, for the very first rally of the Red Berets and March in May of 2018, Donna Marie Miller Ellingham from Demand the Universal Healthcare, that is Demand Universal Healthcare, and a friend drove all the way from Florida to Oklahoma just to attend. That's quite a drive. Quite a drive. Lana says, take between 9 and 10K vitamin D every day. You mean one day you take 5K, and the next day you take 10K? So 15K over 2 days, 7,500 a day. That's a lot. And Lana says, I'm glad to see Amber. Yeah, so was I. Glad to see Amber.
Me too.
Who did a fine job, I think. And also Dolores says, Spring Hill is on the west coast of Florida. Thank you, Devora. Thank you, Dolores. I'm sorry. I momentarily got you confused with my daughter, whose name is Devora. Sorry. I guess just a senior moment. And Carmen Muniz says, Lawton Childs was a great governor. Well, compared to Ron DeSantis, he was certainly a great governor. I never thought he was really that great a governor, but the politicians back in the 70s and 80s seemed terrific compared to the politicians we have now. I don't think it's just the personal characteristics of the politicians, though. I think it has to do with the system.
What I think it is,
corruption
Joe?
Is so ingrained. Please, Lisa.
I got another take on it. I think society demanded more integrity and more. They expected more fortitude out of their politicians. Not to say that politicians weren't, power corrupts no matter what, right? But I don't think that the society as a whole. I know society as a whole did not let politicians get away with the things that they expect from them nowadays.
Yes.
Who was it that literally was it Joseph Biden? Somebody waffled and they were no longer a candidate. And it wasn't long ago. It was long enough ago. I think it might have been George W. Bush race where there was still 4 or 5 candidates in the race, and somebody waffled on something, and that was the end of his campaign. We don't even hear anybody talk about that now. You change your policy stance in the middle of a campaign back then, and
You're right, and people just accept it.
People do accept it now. I think it's
and they just accept it. Yes, there's much to that point of view. When you compare, the reaction to what Nixon did, which after all was only a burglary. He was only involved, in a burglary, and you compare that.
A political burglary.
Yes, a political burglary, and you compare that, to what Bush, the younger, was involved in, the Iraq War. No reason for the Iraq War. Hundreds of thousands of people, perhaps 1 million people killed, in the Iraq War. The breaking of the Middle East. Hundreds of thousands of more dying in Syria and throughout the whole Middle East, the breaking of governments, of states, all throughout that whole area, due to what the Bush administration started. The man is clearly a war criminal, and Nixon committed a burglary and he had to leave the presidency. So yes, I do believe standards had greatly changed. The standards we hold, our politicians too, have changed.
Maybe the standards we hold ourselves to too.
I certainly agree with that too. The standards we hold ourselves to have changed. But it all gradually changed, and I think it had to do with neoliberalism and the enshrinement of the naked pursuit, of profit, and the idea that as long as you get those profits, anything you do is justified. Any cheating, any corruption that you engage in is all right. And once that's going on for years and years and years, and you have double standards of justice where you never prosecute the people, who are doing these things, and they never go to jail, that corrupts the rest of the society.
Like when I was in my second go round of college, back in the 90s, mid to late 90s, the ethics departments in the colleges were booming. They were up and coming or well established already. I think they'd already taken hold as being well established. Ethics was a big deal. Now, I went to a Jesuit university, so I was on the other end, probably this pendulum swings, right? But I was on the far end of the pendulum from the standpoint of ethics ruled the day. And, it was right around that time, the mid to late 80s, when, sanctioning corporations is sociopathic took hold, where the only reason a business exists is to earn money for its stakeholders, right?
Yes.
And 5-10 years later, out in the business world, all of a sudden ethics departments dried up.
Yep.
There was no discussion around societal norms and what was expected from a perspective of what is ethical.
Yes, absolutely correct. A great example comes from the savings, and loan crisis, the 1980s. 1,000 people went to jail because of their behavior, in that particular crisis. And then things happened 10, 15 years later, and the crash of 2008, and nobody is prosecuted, at all out of that. The only thing bad that happened to any of the people, who were involved in that was Bernie Madoff, because he acted in a way to defraud other rich people.
Right.
So he went to jail, but the people who caused the crash were never even prosecuted.
No.
Never.
I mean, we've deregulated everything. I mean, the EPA has been demolished and demoralized, and just about every other element of government that was a watchdog has just been cut off at the knees.
I know. And they used to be such a strong agency too, Peter.
Yeah.
Under Jimmy Carter. I think the changes to that, though, started, in the Reagan administration, and got worse and worse. Though I think the Clinton administration brought that back, actually, somewhat.
He deregulated the FCC.
Yes, he did, and he also passed the commodity. What was that called? It was called the Commodity Financial Modernization Act, or something like that. He did that at the same time as the repeal of Glass-Steagall And,
Yes.
1990, there were two laws that were passed, okay, at that time that really killed the whole of the New Deal regulatory system, just cut it out completely. And that's what started the gambling casino.
Right.
The mortgage-backed security stuff and the CDSs, and the CDOs. That's what started that kind of packaging, okay, of the securities that hid the weaknesses of the system, and that eventually caused the crash of 2008. And Laura says, I want to make sure and thank you, Amber, while you are live on the show, for bringing Joe into the threads that became the foundation for this exciting new endeavor. You are a treasure. Learn MMT.
Amen.
Thank you, Amber. It was you who brought me into the threads.
Thank
I
you,
think
Amber.
it was because I was following you. And it was because I respected you. And still do, of course.
Thank you. That respect is very mutual, Joe.
But thank you, Amber. Lana says, you could all meet at Shimshuri Restaurant in Tyson's Corner. Highly recommended. Yes, that is a very good restaurant. Okay, it's Iranian. And
Oh, yum.
yeah, that's a very, very good restaurant in Tyson's Corner. At least it used to be. I have to admit, I haven't been there in years now, but it was a very good restaurant for a long time. And I'm sure it still is because it was family run. And Dolores says, I really love the Veterans Outpatient Clinic in Newport Richey, Florida. Oh, where's Amber gone? I think she's gone.
I don't know. The internet's funny tonight, Joe.
Yeah, I know. It is funny tonight. That might be what we were experiencing before. Okay, because by the way, the clicking is now gone.
It is, but I still hear crickets.
Yeah, but the crickets are, yeah. I'm not sure what's causing the crickets, but the clicking, the clicking is gone.
Yeah, I think it's my internet.
Huh?
I think it was my internet. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be. And Laura says, Lisa, you're the best. I'm so very grateful we discovered each other on Twitter. Remember the hashtag by Merchants of Death? We need to bring back Merchants of Death on Twitter. Hashtag FOAF. Yes, we do. And Shane says, elect Dan Kapovitz in California. Well, I think it's a
When's
little
the vote on
late.
that, Joe? Is that
It
tomorrow?
is. No, it was today.
Oh, what happened?
I don't know what happened. I have no idea what happened. I mean, I hope that Dan won, but that would be some kind of miracle if he did.
Yeah.
Kay says, I worked in healthcare when it was not for profit, and it was way better then. And Lana says, how far we have fallen. Yes, we have. And you can feel it all around us, that fallen. The whole business of how the right wing, is moving now. It's just incredible. It's almost become, an article of faith, on the right, that when they lose, it can only be because the election, is fraudulent. They somehow seem to believe that there's no other way they can lose. There's no honest way, that they can lose. So Larry Elder was saying, even before the vote had started, in California, that if he loses, it's rigged.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Yeah, I mean, he was going on about that. So the funny thing is, I know Trump himself does not believe that. And he's just plain lying because he's always been a liar all throughout his life.
The man's not stable. Come on. He's just not. Let's just be real.
I didn't say he was stable. Okay, I just said he lied, throughout his life, and so he does that just as a matter of course.
I
And
think he
tries
really
to
likes he really likes to pit people against one another, and everybody fell for it.
yes,
It's how he ran his businesses. It's how he's so contentious. He's, and it's not, come on, we're back to the societal demand, right? Demand more of people. If we as a society started to demand more of ourselves, more just being able to trust one another, not, I mean, I think it's why, especially this group of Red Berets, we try not to let any crap go because we don't go and troll people. That's not the point. But when we get trolled with some garbage narrative, we push back on it. Because if we don't, look, we're not going to come after you. You can go do whatever you want in your little corner of the sandbox. That's great. But if you're coming into our world, we're going to call you out because there's just, be kind but take no bullshit kind of thing.
yes,
It's just not worth it.
yes, I entirely agree. Carbon Unit says life is so hard, people are overwhelmed and can barely pay attention to the corruption, and privatization committed by the powers that be. Well, yes, I
Yeah.
think a lot of this may be because people are overwhelmed and can barely pay attention. But it's also because they've come to expect and to tolerate, the corruption and the privatization.
I think they feel powerless. I really do. I think that's what's going on. People really feel powerless. And just on that note, I would think that any progressive, no, I'm not going to use that word anymore. Anyone that is running on a platform that is similar to the platform flanks of climate, social justice, jobs for everyone, housing for everyone, criminal justice reform, regulatory reform, all of these things, Medicare for all of that, right? Call it whatever you want. I'm done with the damn labels. If you are true to helping rebuild this society, once we rebuild the fabric of society, which, by the way, got blown apart in the 90s and in the late 80s, because children who were living in towns with their parents when they grew up and went to school usually had to move out of town to get a decent job, and we destabilized our fabric, our family
Yes,
fabric, our
yes, yes.
established roots, all of that kind of stuff, right? But if we as a society demand better, this is why we're saying in the Red Berets, get into your communities. And if you're in an urban community with a big population and it's easy to tap into the people and the organizations that facilitate bringing people together, great. If you're in a rural community, maybe you go hang out at, you know, I don't know, your local wheat feed store, right? Because everybody in rural America in farms and whatnot ends up sooner or later at the feed store on Sunday or whatever it is. Talk to people. Talk about what you expect of your leadership. And it doesn't have to be that you're talking about the presidency. You can make it ambiguous. It could be your school board, it could be your teachers, it could be the guys that run the, you know, the auto agencies where you go to buy your cars. Whatever it is. Just start little by little talking about what you expect from your community and your community leaders. What kind of contributions are you going to tolerate, and what kind of contributions aren't you going to tolerate? We are already seeing huge divestments from fossil fuel industries that have really been brought about by our Native American people, who very, very quietly, and I'm saying quietly because we don't hear a whole heck of a lot about it, but they are actually getting municipalities and people around them businesses, community organizations, colleges to divest from fossil fuels. And it's working. Okay. When insurance industries are refusing to insure them because the goodwill of their entity is at risk if they insure them because of the perception of the public, that's how we win this. Honestly.
It is. It is. And they have caused a lot of divestment, certainly. They've been very, very successful, okay, at that. And it's not easy. They've been very
It's
persistent.
ramping up. It started to ramp itself up in the last week, even.
Yes. Yes, it looks like divestment is going to happen. And that is a wonderful thing for all of us. Jeffrey Denton points to the example of Brenda Snipes, who was appointed by Jeb Bush, okay, in Florida, in the, I think it's the Florida 23rd CD, Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Yes.
CD. She had to be appointed because of the previous the Broward County election supervisor was forced to resign due to questionable election practices during the pregnant Chad, hanging Chad 2000 debacle. Then Brenda Snipes was forced to resign due to questionable election practices when all of Tim Canova's ballots were destroyed before they could be presented in a lawsuit concerning that the fact, and then his comment trails off. Okay, but I do remember that there were very questionable practices. She destroyed the ballots. There were also questions about the chain of custody, okay, in those elections. There was also probably hacking into the machines because in the second election, okay, the results for Tim were very questionable. It was like the same sort, okay, of fraction magic was used, okay, in each of the parts of the congressional district, okay, so that he always got, I think, something like the same percentage of the vote. Was down around 5% when polls were showing that he had far more support. Okay. So yes, that was all very crooked. Amber says, this was great. Thank you so much. Got to run for the evening. But love to all of you. And love to you, Amber, okay, as well. And I hope, okay, the next time you'll be willing to do a one-on-one conversation. That would be very, very nice as well. Though we had a wonderful conversation here tonight, too. But still, I think you can see perfectly well that you would be great in a one-on-one conversation as well.
Absolutely. I'm sure she would be. You just have to break in, right? It's kind of big, scary getting out here.
I know. And once you break in, it gets to be a lot easier. Carmen says, thanks for coming, Lisa. You're a breath of fresh air.
Thank you, Carmen.
You certainly were. And Kay says, Ohio used to be #1 in the world back then, nonprofit, but no more. Dolores said, we are in the pre-shadow of Mercury retrograde that starts at
not again.
Yeah, Mercury retrograde affects electronic devices and communication.
How long are we going to be in, Carmen?
How long are we going to be in it, Dolores?
Oh, Dolores.
And Carmen says, I absolutely, and Dolores says, Carmen, I absolutely agree. And Lana says, Larry Elder, ugh. Well, who won? Does anybody know? Are there any results from California
don't tell
yet?
me Larry won.
I don't know. I have no idea. I haven't seen anything from that.
Oh, God.
But they should be having some results by now, I would think. Good night, Amber. Thank you for a great discussion. And Carmen says, Carmen says, no, the GOP is using the rigged spiel because Democrats can't dispute it much because they're guilty of it in 2016 and 2020, or we'd have the President Sanders.
You know what, Joe? Someday we need to talk about RICO and states funding presidential primaries that don't seem to need us to vote in them.
Yes, I would love to talk about that.
I do too. I've been looking for somebody for 4 years to have a legitimate conversation on that. So put that in your hat.
Okay, I will put it in my Red Beret.
There you go. I'll put it in mine too.
Should we invite Tim to talk about it? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he wants to talk about that stuff.
Tim Canova?
Yeah, Tim Canova. He used to really want to talk about it, but I think he's really had a hard time. And those two elections, I think those two elections cost him a fortune.
Probably. I think we should noodle on that. There are some good people we could pull into that discussion for sure.
Yeah, I think some very good people. And Laura says, absolutely, Lisa. I think that was in reference to something else you said. And Laura said, I think that's very insightful, Lisa. People do feel powerless. It's bringing out the worst, but I do think, yes, we're in the middle of a painful but necessary societal fabric.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to recreate the fabric of our future.
And the fabric of our trust, especially the trust fabric, I think.
Yes.
Karma says, great advice, Lisa. Mona said, did anyone hear from Tom Hartman's rant speech about why the U.S. doesn't have a healthcare program? It's majorly related to racism. Why am I not surprised? I heard Tom Hartman just this morning on someone's program for a little while, but I wasn't able to get sufficiently deeply into it. I had to go look elsewhere for other things. I think what it was is I had to try to set up my full schedule of meetings for this week, so I was hopping around from here to there and elsewhere. Oh, and by the way, for everybody, I have Jeff Denton coming tomorrow for an interview, and I also have Cindy Jacobs, I believe, coming on Saturday. Okay, at this point, so that should be a great interview. Okay, and next week I have Jason Call scheduled for the 22nd, and Sharif scheduled for the 23rd as well.
Awesome.
Kay says, I used to call Southeast North Carolina, Southern Ohio, because there were so many young people from Northeast Ohio that were working there. They said, F Ohio, we aren't going back. Jeffrey Denton said exactly 5% of the vote every time. Yeah, wasn't it always 5% of the vote? It had to have been rigged. It was statistically impossible, right, Jeff? Carmen says, love back at you, Amber. And Jeff says, and then Brenda Snipes, what's in campaigning with Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who was also forced to resign as chair of the DNC, but got to become Hillary's campaign manager. I don't think she was her total campaign manager, but she was high up in the campaign. Jeffrey says, thank you, Amber. And Kay says, CNN is covering the California recall. Well, what has CNN been saying? And Dolores says the Mercury retrograde until October 18th. So you're saying we have to have live streams disturbed by clicks until October 18th? Oh. And Carmen says, add, I see. Carmen says, add feathers to your berets, or is that cultural misappropriation? No, not really, because the Lederhosen guys in Germany had feathers in their little green hats, too. I think they're in Switzerland also, aren't they?
Yes.
The Lederhosen guys. And Jeffrey says, it always hurts my teeth in my head. Oh, you mean the retrograde?
The retrograde?
And Carmen says, if Elder One, I'm nuking Mercury retrograde. I don't know how we do that, but maybe you'll teach us, Carmen.
I'm worse in the retrogrades on the way in and the way out. And once I realize it's happening, everything, at least I can tiptoe through the tulips. But when I don't know what's happening and everything's swirling around me, so thank you, Dolores, for telling me.
Okay, so Lana brings us some news from California, or actually from CBS News. Governor Gavin Newsom will remain in office, per CBS News. Well, yes, that's a no-no from one point of view, but I think it is a lot better result than if Larry Elder had become the governor, of California. And Dolores Pierce says, yay, Jeffrey Denton. And Laura says, good night to you both. Thank you very much for being honest, caring, solidarity, organizers. It really means a lot. We've got each other. Your audience is great too. Yeah. My people are great.
Yes, they are.
They are great. We have really taken a lot over a long period of time. And this really is a wonderful little group. A lot of solidarity in it. Anna says, that Brenda Snipes should have been jailed. If I destroyed ballots, they would have put me in jail. Carmen says, okay, Mercury hurts teeth and head. And Dolores says, but you're welcome, Lisa. And Jeffrey says, thank you, 50 lines only.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. I have a picture of me and Jeff when we were out protesting Kilmer's office. I'll have to send it to you. I'll post it.
Okay. I would love to see it.
It's cool.
I would love to see it. But we'll be seeing Jeffrey, I was going to say in the flesh tomorrow, but it's not really in the flesh. It's in the airwaves.
Yeah, we're in the show.
Yeah, in the show.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
I am too. Kay says, thank you for another great discussion. Thank you, Kay, for contributing so much to this discussion. And thank you, everyone, for coming. I think it is time to say goodnight. I'm hang out for another minute or so, Lisa, okay?
Sure. Thanks, everybody. It was great to be here.
I'm going to end the broadcast. I think that Amber has left. At this point, she had to go do something else. And Laura says, yay, Jeffrey, tomorrow. And Dolores says, does it say anything about the sun solar storm in the near future? That was a question from Carmen to Dolores, I think. Carmen says, also Lana says, it was good to see Jeff. Carmen says, thank you, Joe and Bonnie. Lana Dell says, good night. Good night, Lana. And Dolores Pierce says, thank you for a great discussion and show. And thank you, Dolores, for all that you do for this show. It is not unnoticed, and it is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. Good night, everyone.